I've been really into terrain painting recently, and I wanted to show you how you can paint your own unique grass texture using free Photoshop brushes. The texture we'll paint will be seamless or tileable, and I'll even show you a couple of tricks at the end for how to make the tiling more difficult to notice, such as rotating the image 90 degrees. So this is the texture that we'll paint in this video, and I'll also show you some of the other variations I made using the same process in Brushpack. And if you want to download any of these and use them in your game for free, no problem. I'll include links to them in the description. So the brush pack I'm going to use in this video is free, and you can get it here on DeviantArt. It's by a user named Roggles, and you can just sign in and click this download link for free. This brush pack is awesome, but if you're willing to pay about $10, then there are some extremely good brushes by this lady, Madeline Belwar. In particular, I like her Ghibli-inspired brushes, and then she has a Ghibli-inspired brushes too. I really wanted to make this video using this brush pack, but I thought it would be better to choose a free pack instead since people might want to follow along. But I would highly encourage you to check out these brushes. Alright, so the first order of business is figuring out the colors that I'm going to use, the different shades of green. And the way I typically do that is I'll just pick some color that I like, and I try to keep in mind that that's like the darkest color I want to use. So I'll pick the color I like and the darkest version of it. I'll set my opacity to 15%, and then I'll just keep drawing like a stroke onto itself with a color that's maybe like 15% higher on the brightness and a little bit more saturation. So you'll notice here I'll draw one stroke, and that's, you know, that color 15%, and then I'll draw on that part again, and you'll see every time I do this it creates kind of a new, lighter, more saturated shade of green. So here we've, you know, created 5 or 6 different versions of green. And now I want to like store those different greens like into a swatch. So I can just use the eyedropper tool. I can pick it and then create a new swatch color, and I'll name each of the colors with the hex code. So here I'll, you know, Command C to copy new swatch. I'll just give it some sort of name. I like to use like DD for double dark, D dark, M medium, L light, 2 L's double light, and I'll put the hex there. So you can visibly see which one's dark and light, but I just kind of like to, you know, keep in mind that DD is darker than just D, and 2 L's is lighter than just L. Just kind of a convention I use. But yeah, by the color picking each one of these, I've now created, I guess, a swatch of the different shades of green. These are not the only colors I'll use, like in the drawing, but these are all the shades of green. Now later on, I'm gonna grab different shades of green with opacity as well, and that's just going to create, you know, all sorts of chaos and different and even more shades of green. But I like to use this to create like the base colors. And what I'll typically do is when I'm creating the different like areas where the top colors will be, I'll paint with 100% opacity at first, and then I'll start using, you know, 50-30% opacity later. So again, I've picked all these colors. I'm going to select one of the colors, 100% opacity, and paint like kind of the base layer or the top layer here. So we can see at the top opacity is 100%. I've grabbed this sample brush again from the Roggles brush pack, and I'm going to grab the lightest color at 100% opacity on the top layer and just start kind of filling in where I think the highest points of the grass will be. The highest points will be the lightest color. This is super random, honestly. The idea is to try not to create like lines or like vertical or horizontal lines too much. Like keep it diagonal, keep it random, and then the areas between these little splotches should be pretty narrow. If there's like a lot of like gaps and stuff between them, I feel that you can notice that pretty easily when it goes to tile. You know, something else I didn't mention. I apologize. I don't think I show it here, but the reason I'm able to paint in this like tiled mode, up at the top it says view, and there'll be a pattern preview mode. You just turn that on and then it enables this. It lets you paint off of the visible square there, and then it'll wrap around. And sometimes you can zoom out to get a quick idea of how well it tiles. But yeah, I just kind of draw some base splotches here and try to keep the gaps narrow. We're gonna put another layer beneath it later on, so leave some gaps, just don't leave huge gaps. That's what I'm gonna say. The other thing is, later on I'm gonna actually combine a bunch of these. There's too many smaller splotches, and they need to be like kind of larger ones. So this brush is really cool. It's Bushy Cutie. I don't know what the name is, but this is like probably my favorite brush for like putting like texture or grass blades. And for right now, I'm just going around the perimeter of each one of these, and instead of having the little circles, I want kind of the sharp blades. It's not a big deal, but the reason I had it 100% opacity is you can see if I had painted this originally like 50% opacity, then right now these strokes would be even brighter, and that's not what I want. So that's why I'm 100% opacity even now. It's kind of going around the edges, creating kind of like a grassy texture or shape. So yeah, the Bushy Cutie brush for that. So at this point, I want to create some sort of texture on these splotches, because right now they're just a solid color. So I created a clipping mask on top of that, the original 100% opacity splotches. I created a clipping mask on top of it. And when you just create a new layer and hold down Option and then click the line between the two layers. Anyways, I dropped the opacity down and just start grabbing. I think I'm going to use like different shades of green here. So I'm going to get lighter, then darker again, then lighter again, and just keep going back and forth with this brush. The name is like 31 apparently. Again, from the Roggles brush pack. And I'm just trying to create some sort of texture. I just don't want that solid color anymore. So apparently I'm just going from brush to brush here, just trying to get randomness and messing it up. So here's the grass brush, which is like a couple blades of grass, and I'm probably doing it with a dark color. So it's pretty much all random here. I just want texture. So I'll do the same thing, same brush, lighter color probably, and just keep going back and forth until I'm satisfied. So again, I guess I would describe this step as just switching between the different brushes and switching back and forth between light and dark colors to just add texture onto a clipping mask. Just kind of mess up that solid color. And throughout the video, there will be times like this where I'm not really going to have a whole lot to say, so I'll probably just maybe play music and speed up this part once I'm just doing something kind of repetitive. So this section's pretty simple. The goal is to just create a level between the light and the dark layer. If you think about it like a house, we just drew the lighter second story, and the dark is like the basement. We just need to create that first story between them. I'm using a color that's kind of between the light and the dark color, but I'm choosing one on the lighter side. That's because like overall I want the whole background to be lighter. I don't want that, the light contrasting with the dark, because then you'll be able to easily see the lines and where they tile. So by the end of this, the background will be much, much lighter because we keep drawing lighter things on top of it. But yeah, I just wanted like a texture on the background, some areas to be lighter than others, because right now it's just that solid background color. So I'm not coloring in every spot. I'm just kind of jumping around between different spots. The spots I like to imagine like those junctions or those triangular spots between them, between where three of them meet. I like to imagine that it's going to be even darker in the middle, and then it gradually kind of goes down a slope to the center. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's kind of how I approached it. That's why I kind of leave the center spots like darker. But yeah, this is really just a random step using the lighter color. So this step's pretty much the same as the last step. I just want to continue to lighten up that background layer. This time I want to use like a grassy brush, and the other thing is I want to start to merge the different blobs together. I like to think that the original blobs we painted were like at a very high elevation, and then I'm going to use a slightly less light color, because we have opacity here, to merge the blobs together at like maybe a slightly lower elevation. So two tall plateaus connected by like a little ravine or something, or a little slope. That's really all there is to it. If you compare where we end up at the end of this versus like a couple sections ago, really the big difference is that just like the background got lighter and we have less visible lines, outlining the different plateaus. That's really all we're doing here. This time we're just doing it with a textured brush, like a grassy brush. But it's really no different than the last step. At this point, I'm just going to take a little break and clean up my layers. I'm going to apply the clipping mask by merging it into the top layer. I really just want to end up with 2 layers. The top, like the lighter stuff, and then the background, the dark stuff. That way I can still have more clipping masks later on for like the top if I want to brighten up the edges of the blades of grass as they hang over the background, which I'm going to do that later. So you just want to end up with a top and a background here. So I want to add some color to this, and I thought the best way to do that was just to add some little flowers. This Roggles brush pack comes with a flower brush, so I just kind of pick like a pink color and some yellow colors. I try to keep them light and desaturated, just little splashes of color here and there. And then I like to bunch them together, like I might have a pink flower and a yellow flower next to each other, and as you saw right there, I might do 2 at different sizes, so that, one's like a baby flower and one's like a fully grown flower. But yeah, so the colors I typically went for were pink, yellow, a couple reds. I tried some blues and whites and they're okay, but I like the pink, yellow, and reds. And that's really all I'm doing here is just stamping random flowers. The main point is to do this on a separate layer. The reason is so that we can turn the layer on and off and when we export the image. So we can export the grass without the flowers and then one with the flowers, and that creates 2 terrain layers in Unity. So just put the flowers on a separate layer and you'll be good. So the goal of this section is to just create like some highlights and little splashes of color. I'm going to create a clipping mask on the topmost layer. This way I could take a lighter color and go around like the edges of the top layer, or the grass that hangs over the darker layer, the background, and I'll be able to paint only on those blades of grass that hang over the dark area without like blurring or filling in that background. I'll also just kind of paint in the middle of the grass too and create fake like elevations. So like if I use like a lighter color next to a darker color, like right there, it kind of looks like I created like a fake elevation or a fake slope or ledge or something. But I just take the lighter color and paint it next to darker colors basically. And with the clipping mask, I won't mess up and paint over the background. That's the main thing here. As far as the colors go, here I've got this kind of brownish yellow. Maybe the grass is dying a little bit in some areas. Maybe it's yellow, so it's on its way to dying. And it's like the colors in general. But I'll also sometimes just use like a brighter green when I want to do highlights. So there's really, it's just kind of random for the most part. The most important thing is to do this on a clipping mask on the top layer. So for this section, I had a really cool idea. I think I just executed it poorly. I wanted to have like the darker areas, the spots underneath the top layer. I wanted to fill it with water, make it look like it had just rained and it's lush and there's still some standing water that hasn't gotten into the soil yet. So I started filling in these gaps with like just a barely blue color. And I think it looked really cool, like the colors go together. The problem is that because I left the gaps so large so that I could have the water, once I put this in the game, I kind of felt like you could easily see how it tiles because I left the gaps too large, to make room for the water. If I could do it again, I would have more narrow gaps, but I probably would still keep the water. So yeah, the whole point of this is just to add little like standing water in some of the lower areas. I think it was a cool idea. I think I just didn't do it very well, but it shows the concept at least. So my plan now is to draw some rocks. I want to do this on a separate layer so that I can export the image with and without the rocks. To draw the rocks, I'm still kind of learning, but I like to draw the frame first, and then I like to have 3 faces, and I'll have 3 different shades of gray. It's like a light, medium, and a dark. If I assume the light's coming from like the top right, that would mean that the right face would be brighter. And I'll pretend that the bottom face is in the shadow, so I'll use the dark color there. I'm using the pencil brush because it's like kind of a nice drawing brush, but it's also textured like chalky. And the last thing, I'm gonna go along the edges where the faces connect, and I'll use the lightest color for that, and I just imagine that the light shines more brightly along the edges, I guess. It's okay if the lines aren't very straight. I think that actually makes it look more realistic. And as far as the outside of the rock goes, well, I'm just kind of getting like a base shape now. I'll go and I'll erase it later to get a kind of a more sharp edge, but for the most part it doesn't matter because I'm gonna kind of push this into the grass. I'm gonna draw grass along the edges and make it look like the grass is coming up over top of the rock. So it'll look like right now, like the rock really stands out, but I'll kind of push it into the grass later. And as far as the colors go, I'm going to paint green on top of it later to kind of make it look a little mossy and then just kind of make it stand out a little bit less and kind of blend in a little bit better. So yeah, that's really all there is to it. I'll draw a couple of rocks basically in the same style, the same 3 colors, pretty much 3 faces, and then the edges will be light. I'll put some like shadows along the bottom sides of the faces as well, but for the most part you don't even see it because I've covered it with grass. So as I was looking at it, I kind of felt like that right face was like, it was too big or something. It needed to be more angled. So I just take the eraser and I'm just gonna remove some of it. You can see with each one of those strokes it gets a little sharper and maybe taller, I think. So at this point I'm pretty happy with the shape of the rock, but to really make it look 3D or to add depth, I think when you draw these grass blades right in front of it and make it look like the grass is growing over top, that's what really does it. So I'm going to color pick a grass right next to it, using the grass brush, like right there already. I think it looks so much better. I messed up, I have a problem with my pen, so I undo it here, but you don't need to have a pen, but if you do, the harder you press, the larger the grass blades will be, so you can draw like different levels of grass. The one problem with this brush, it doesn't really let you draw like upside down or to the sides. I mean, you could affect the brush settings, like, modify them yourself, but you'll see when I start to do like the sides and the top, the grass still points up, and I kind of need to point toward the rock. Later on, like I think off camera, I take the pencil tool and I just draw a couple blades of grass like going down, and that really helped. But yeah, right here you can see I'm having trouble getting the grass to grow down. It keeps growing up, so that's fine. And then it also kind of fades away a little bit too, because I'm going to paint moss on top of it, so you can't even really see the blades of grass. But yes, had I had some grass growing straight down on the top left, that would have helped a lot. But you can just use the pencil tool to do that. I had forgot that I wanted to add some shadows to the sides. I wasn't sure if it was even a good idea because the grass kind of covers up the bottom sides, so I really don't even know if you can see it. But I just took the color, I'm going to darken it a little bit by lowering that brightness meter. And then I'm just going to like draw on the bottom parts of the faces. Again, I don't actually know if this made any difference because it was pretty much covered by grass. So you can probably skip this step. Yeah, and so after drawing those shadows, I re-enabled the grass layer, and yeah, I don't think I can really see the shadows that well, but it's okay. So then I'll just lightly paint some green moss on top of it with, looks like that 18 brush, and just a very light opacity. I kind of zoom out to see how it tiles, and I like it. So now I want to draw a second rock. I want it to have a different shape than the first, and I'm not very good at like three-dimensional drawing or drawing with perspective. So this one was just kind of shaped like a coffin, I thought. So again, I'm going to draw the frame, kind of the outside. Same thing with the pencil brush. Yeah, it just kind of has like a coffin shape. But because I kind of used these kind of sharp corners, I felt like it made it easier to draw 3D because I could take each of the corners and just go straight down. At least that's what I thought. I kind of did this in a roundabout way. I did the top layer with the lightest color, and then I think I fill it in with the medium color later. Instead of just drawing the medium color and then doing the edges. I don't know why. I'm going to try to draw in like the sides, the side faces. Even at this step, as I'm looking at it, I can tell that the perspective is off. So like that left face right there is like too big, and maybe it shouldn't be there at all, or I wasn't really sure. But I just kind of fill it in a little bit, and I'm going to go through and erase it later and get the shape that I really like. Kind of get a more sharp, pointy shape. But for now, I'm just kind of trying to block in the different sides. But yeah, as you look at it right now, you can tell that left side's wrong. So. And this is what I meant about doing this in the wrong order. I don't know why I drew the top layer with the light color, and now I'm going to fill it in with the medium. It's like I drew the edges first or something. So now I'm going to fill in this with the medium color. I should have just done that to begin with. I'm not 100% sure why I did it in this order. But that's like the medium color, I'm pretty sure. So I think I stopped using the color palette. The swatch. I think I started color picking the other rock to get the colors. That's why the swatches are not visible. And even now the edges are like too big. So I know I'll go back in here later and kind of make them like much more narrow. See, I can tell that top right, like the shadow is just like it shouldn't be there. It's too big or something. So I'll come through with an eraser later, and I'll kind of fix up the shape of it. You see, this is me not knowing how to draw in 3D perspective, and having to kind of like erase my way to it. So I've gotten much closer to like a 3D look, and I'm starting to get frustrated because I can tell that the rightmost side is not right, like the top right side. But I just get aggravated and I decide that I'm just going to cover the sides with grass anyways and hide it. So I kind of cheated it a little bit. And I think you can get away with that if you're drawing grass. Had this been dirt, I'm not 100% sure what I would have done. So yeah, for the next little while, I'm just going to draw grass in front of this rock. And there's actually another rock that I drew off screen. I was kind of frustrated with this one and wanted to try again. And so I'll draw grass in front of these couple of rocks here for a little while. I'll probably speed this part up. But I do want to call out, you'll notice where I drew the grass next to the rock, it's kind of like solid color next to the rock. And you see I'm going through with an eraser and kind of cleaning that up. This is because I should have used a clipping mask on the rock and then drew the grass on the clipping mask. That's what I should have done. But I didn't. So yeah, you can get around that with the clipping mask, or just kind of erase the parts of the grass that overlap with the grass. That's why it's solid color. And I think I did a pretty poor job of color picking the grass blades as I went around. I just picked one color and then took it all the way around, and I think that was the problem. This is pretty insignificant, but I just wanted to try to draw like a little vine or something, and have like little leaves coming off the vine, and I wanted like a little bit of red, like maybe like roses or something. I wasn't really sure what it was. I just wanted a little bit of like color on the gray. I didn't like all the gray. So I'll just draw a couple circles here, and I think I put a white dot in the center. Afterward, I feel like the color is too saturated, so I think I ended up just like changing the opacity of the layer or something. So, but I just wanted to try to draw a vine on the rock. I do that for the other rocks kind of off camera as well, so you'll notice like things just keep getting added as we switch between sections, and that's why. So when I was pretty much done and I imported it into Unity to see how it looked, I could easily see how it tiled because the rocks just stood out too much. It was like the color of the rocks was too different from the grass, and I could just see where it tiled. So to fix that, I've added a clipping mask on top of the rock layer, and I'm going to very lightly, with very low opacity, just paint green, like a green fog over top of like the gray rock. This really helped to just kind of blend in or fade away the rock, or fade the rock into the grass. It made a huge difference when I imported it into Unity when I was trying to see if I could notice the tiling. So it's just a clipping mask on top of the rock, light opacity, green color. Cool, so that's all there is to it. Let's take it over into Unity and see how it looks.
Alright, so if it's okay, I wanted to show you a couple of tricks on how to use these textures. So to begin with, I just want to show you that I exported the texture with flowers, but I exported a version that didn't have any flowers, and a third version that had both flowers and rocks. I did that. Well, first I created some terrain layers for each one, but I did that so that I could paint rocks only in this area. Maybe I could have flowers over here. But next to the house, maybe there's no flowers or rocks. The problem is, you can see it's still tiles. Like this area right here is pretty distinctive, and I could have painted that better to add more chaos or randomness there. But one trick you can do, you can take your image that you've exported, this one with flowers, you can just rotate it 90 degrees. See, it's the same image, just rotated 90 degrees. And if you create a terrain layer for that, you can just paint over these areas that, so in Unity 6 it's been doing that, I don't know why. You could just paint over the areas that clearly tile, like that. And it kind of helps to break it up. And you can rotate like a third version that's say 180 degrees maybe, or 270 to have even more variation, but I don't think that's necessary. And the last thing I wanted to show you is just a couple of variations that I created of the texture. I used the same Roggles brush set when I created these other ones. So I'm just going to swap out this texture and show you what it looks like. So here's one. Okay. This one's really pretty. It wasn't as jungly. I think I used more bluish green colors and then some splashes of yellow at the end. It turned out really nice. And this one. Yeah, it was more yellow than I wanted, but it's okay. And finally, this one was my favorite. This one had a lot more texture. Yeah, this one turned out really nice. The texture, I think it was with that brushy cutie brush from the Roggles brush pack. But man, yeah, this one turned out really well. And again, I could rotate this one 90 degrees to really break up the tiling, although I kind of don't even see it. But yeah, those are just some variations you can create. Oh, and this last one, it was kind of out there. I don't really know what biome this belongs in. The colors are kind of weird. Maybe like a fantasy theme or something. I don't know. We'll go back to this one.